Hello, everybody. Tenacious Earl here, and this is the Tenacious Dugout. Kind of feels like a dugout. It's the reason I call it that because I don't know. I half finished my basement. One moment here. Whoop, that's not what I wanted. This. Hang on, just a moment. That may be a little better. I felt like the camera was way too close to my face, and it may still be like miles too close to my face, but and I mean literal miles, like most people probably would. Hold on, that's a little better. I would say maybe I should just get off of the camera, but that's okay. I'm not terribly shy, so maybe I should be. But hey, yeah. So this is less of a kind of riff on life in general, or some. Although, hey, the Women's World Cup gold. Men play for the Gold Cup. Uh, it's not the camera ID that's the problem. It's the ugly mug in front of it. But anyway, but Women's World Cup victors, second in a row. Um, there's a lot of stuff about politics about it, and I just don't want to get into that too much. I got to make sure. I got to look at this camera because I should be trying to communicate with all you. So the title of this is wrapping up the Tenacious Football League Week 5, and the reason I'm doing that is because I think I mentioned it in the fourth quarter that I broadcast of Jacksonville against Tennessee because it was a close game. Second season, first off, I find it to be a fascinating game. It's not without its flaws. But I would say, in general, the flaws are not. The positives outweigh the flaws by a lot. So much so that I just purchased the 2018 NFL set, which I believe Keith released only this weekend. So I kind of saw that come across the stupid Facebook or whatever they call it, in face chat. I forget. Anyway, Insta chat. I think that might have been what Belichick called it. So I bought that. I'd like to play a couple of one-off games, if only to get some of the interesting characters from the 2018 season, like Josh Allen from my team. He seems to be a hot topic because he's sort of everybody's favorite quarterback to malign. You've got Patrick Mahomes, who broke out. Of course, you have a Patriots team. When you look at the ratings, it makes you wonder how they did what they did. But that's the NFL is kind of like that. You've got teams like Baltimore who have won championships, even though you'd have to say that good defense, great defense, whatever you want to call it. Usually, you think offense is king, but I don't think this was anything to write home about for New England as far as their offensive ratings or anything. Just a quick look, but you get hot and things go your way, and that's kind of what happened, I think, up there with the Patriots. But I may play a couple of one-off games. Again, I keep looking at this stupid PC because I want to go over the scores eventually, But anyway, back to second season. The game, it takes some time to play, and that's why I don't usually play much of it on the channel here. I think it's a little bit hippity hoppity to try and do play by play for. It is kind of like a lot of checks, and history maker. Baseball is and golf are a little better about that. There's still also a lot of checks, but I think, at least in the case of baseball, you're talking about still a game that's able to be done in an hour, whereas a game of second season, a quarter takes about an hour when you're narrating. So just the gameplay, I think, in terms of a presentation on YouTube or Facebook Live or Periscope or whatever streaming setup you want to use, is just a little bit awkward, or it's a little more awkward than it is for some other games. So I completed game week 5 out of 18. I had to do 18 because I chose 9 teams for the Tenacious Football League, hence Tenacious. I thought about using strychnine, but I thought that was a real sort of morbid, strychnine's like a poison, so I thought that was maybe a little on the grotesque, taste, lacking some taste side. So I went with Tenacious because it's kind of ludicrous, kind of like the Tenacious designation is. But it also kind of gets the point across. It's 9 teams. But with that means you've got to have at least one bye every week. And so to get 16 games, it just seemed like an 18-week schedule with 2 byes for each team just kind of made sense. So now I will also caution you. I'm going to show you the standings. I'm going to show you the scores and all that stuff. I'll tell you to pay attention to the middle column first, because those are the scores. The standings are there too. Bear with the standings, because the way that I did my see, ID's comment about the Tenacious being better than strychnine. There's probably some other things that have 9 in it. Sweet Caroline. Wah, wah, wah. I don't know. Maybe not. So I did my normal kind of double round robin thingamajig with the in this case a nonagon, 9 cornered polygon, and set up a schedule, and then I randomized it. And in the randomization, I guess I didn't really think too much of the fact that Carolina has 2 byes. They're both of their byes already, and so it makes the standings look a little bit skewed, because you've got one team that's only played 3 games, while you have a couple that have played 5 so far. But I would just say, take it that it's a fictional league using real teams, but I'm quote unquote doing the best that I can. So, and maybe it's not the best that I can. Maybe I could have done it a little better. Maybe I could have found a way to make sure that no team had more than one, or was that there were no teams left more than a game behind everybody else. Having said all of that, let's go ahead and put this up. So for the scores, I think I mentioned during the Jacksonville game that Oakland defeated Buffalo 22-13. Not really going to get into many. You know what I realized I could have done, which would have made this a little bit nicer. Although, oh yeah, here we go. I'll put this up here so I can look at you. Then I can get rid of my little. I can get rid of my little logo. Boo-hoo. All right, so I'm going to look down here at the scores. See these over here? That's where the scores are. Not down here. Not down there. Over there. And way over there will be the next games. So, yeah, the Raiders beat the Bills. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but the Jaguars, we saw them get a late field goal from Myers to beat Tennessee. The Bears trounced the Dolphins, which was a surprise. The Dolphins in 2016 were a playoff team. I think they went 10-6, and Chicago I think was 3-13. But Brian Hoyer put up a nice little game for them. And ID, you'll probably know it at this point because I just mentioned it was 2016. But yeah, so, and I have to go through a couple of other little, what do I want to call it, sort of findings / things I'm going to be doing going forward because of some realities. So anyway, and lastly, the Chiefs beat the Ravens. So let me see. I want to also take a second to go through what the first week, because this is a repeat of week 1, except the flip. The flip, you know what I mean? So in week 1, Oakland hosted Buffalo and won 24-17. Tennessee defeated Jacksonville 29-26 in overtime in week 1. The Dolphins overcame the Bears 16-11. A lot of field goals in that game and a safety. That's another thing about this game that I've had is sort of like a predominance of safeties. It's a little interesting, but maybe it's because I think it could partially be because the coffin corner can lend itself to maybe a higher number of being down to inside the 10, and then you get a penalty, and it just kind of like sets it up for a sack. So, and then finally, the Chiefs beat the Ravens 29-20. So that was almost a repeat score for Kansas City, 29-20 in week 1. So in this one, as you can see down there, 29-21. So, and whereas in the first game, Alex Smith had 309 yards to 135 for Flacco through the air. This is second season, so hi Dave. I am using second season for this. It's funny, I also have Stratomatic Football, which I haven't really cracked yet, which is somewhere between sad and unfortunate. I have read through the rules some, but and in this game in week 5, Flacco had 341, Smith had 205, but that was somewhat score effects. You got to the second half, and the Chiefs were, let's see, they were already up 27-6. So, at that point, Baltimore was chasing it. Kansas City kind of packed it in and was just trying to run the ball, which they didn't do terribly effectively. I think that's because Baltimore has a pretty decent defense in this game. They have a couple of good run defenders, C.J. Mosley in particular, and his number came. Also, Lawrence Guy, a couple of 2-rated run defenders, Weddle as well. So, came right down to Spencer Ware. Didn't really get any runs to help sort of sustain drives towards the end of the game. So, Baltimore got a couple of cheap touchdowns late, one from Juszczyk and one from Wallace through the air. So that got Flacco a couple of touchdowns, even though he was sacked 7 times. So as you can see below the standings, below, Oakland 4-0, the Titans 4-1. The loss to Jacksonville was their first blemish on the season. I almost said season. What the heck is that? So Carolina is the team that has had 2 byes already. So that's a little bit weird, and I admit it, but just take it for what it's worth. There'll be other teams that get multiple byes later in the year, and it might help them. So, although that gets back to my addendum / learning that I'm going to tell you about in a second. All right, and then go down through Kansas City. They look like a pretty good team, 3-2. The Bears and Baltimore kind of like hanging around at 2-3. And again, we'll do the top 4 at a playoff once we get through all this. So we have another 13 weeks. I'm just going to kind of muddle through them and play them here and there, and probably will put some of it on the channel, but not much because, again, I don't think the game lends itself very well to streaming. Maybe to recording if I have the itch to just record large swaths of game and then just try and edit out the tedious parts. So then at the bottom you have Buffalo and Miami and Jacksonville all with 1 win. Miami a bit of a surprise. Jacksonville, Buffalo probably not. Maybe Chicago a little surprising at 2 and 3. They weren't that good that season. I'm not sure Oakland was particularly great in that season either. Okay, so then the matchups for Week 6 at the far right, Jacksonville and Baltimore at M&T Bank Stadium, giving them a plug, I guess, the bank. Oakland at Arrowhead against Kansas City, and then Carolina goes to Soldier Field to face the Bears, and the Bills head to Nashville to face the Titans in a rematch of the home run throwback, whatever you want to call that, Music City Miracle game. And the Dolphins will be on the bye. Voila. So my learning is going to be with injuries, and I think in this game there haven't been a whole lot of injuries to substantial people. And so second season has a mechanism where they have a list of players that all played in 16 games for each team. Not played in, started 16 games. And those guys cannot get a long-term injury. But the way that I'm doing the games here, I am playing them basically with as-played lineups, if you will. I go through and I mark down based on... and I should probably do a video showing... I have done videos in the past kind of talking about it a little bit, but I probably should show you a little bit more. I try to go through the play percentages and come up with a... Like this week in the Baltimore game, I just played it. Steve Smith got injured in the first quarter. I decided to... And basically... after... so it looked to me like, just looking at play time percentages, it was a good idea to have Smith play the first quarter and then Dennis Pitta sort of fill in for him the rest of the game, because it was like he was 75%, Smith only had about 15%, or no, 25%. And I was looking at the at Wikipedia, or maybe just a game recap on ESPN of that game, and Smith got injured at the end of the first quarter. So to me, it just kind of made sense to do that. But so in general, I'm going to be limiting injuries through the end of the game. I don't want to get into things where it takes players away for too long, and I haven't really had any of those lately. I think Hoyer had a couple games, and I used him in Chicago's game this week, and I'm going to use him until he gets injured in the as-played reality. So that's kind of what I'm going to do. So that's kind of my learning from this, and it's something I have to just think through each time I start a new venture within a game, just how the injury mechanism works, and if it makes sense to simulate someone going out for 6 games, like it was going to have Terrence West go out for 6 games, and he played 13. He started 13 games, played in all 16, and I think it just would have really, I could have used Kenneth Dixon more, but I just don't think it really, does it justice to try and get a result that's similar to, or trying to, like the experimental nature of this is to try and see what happens when you match up teams like it, if they had in 2016 in this 9-team gamish. So the throw the ball forward game in a total BS. They wanted Buffalo out of the playoffs somehow. Yeah, could be. Ball was deflated anyway. I don't know about that, but that was probably the one thing that Frank Wycheck did in his career that that was even close to remarkable. Although I guess they did go to the Super Bowl that year, but yeah, that was the start of Buffalo. And I don't know if Goodell was the commissioner at that point or when he came on board, but there definitely started to be a push. Well, Ralph Wilson, generally speaking, was a black sheep among owners. He did things, went against the longtime guys, like the Jerry Joneses, the real powerful, the Maras, I'm trying to think of who else you would classify. Kraft still hadn't really ascended to that level of power yet, but they just wanted to rule the roost, and Wilson he wanted to be able to survive in a small market, and so he did things that pissed off the league. And I think the league, I don't think that I don't know. I don't know if they would intentionally take him out, but it still kind of goes on to this day. I think the Pagulas got a little bit of a reprieve, but you can start to hear it ramping up. The NFL has their guys in the media trying to stir up crap about Pagula wanting to move the Bills and all this stuff, and it's just the way they operate. That's the only way the NFL knows how to operate, is to try and seed stories, to try and cry for public funding, and that's how they do it. They threaten moves. Right now, they don't really have a place to move anybody. They're trying to say Toronto. Anytime the Bills have played in Toronto, which there are a lot of Bills fans in Toronto. Anytime they've played at Rogers Center, it has been a stinkeroo game. Nobody's shown up. The atmosphere has been terrible. And I just don't think anybody in Toronto is going to show up for a team that's moved. So that's kind of where the NFL stands with the Bills. And I can't imagine, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe they will, I think if it's legit, they have a decent shot of making the playoffs this year. But I think they also have their ways. So, yeah, Al Davis. But Al Davis was also a renegade. He was also a guy that I think the way the Raiders went in the years after Gruden left were all about the way that he, and you have to wonder that L.A. coming back is also related to him passing on. That he had, and his son had relented. They gave him enough concessions about going to Las Vegas and really finding a new home there. That because I think Davis I think anything that would benefit the league and not him, he was just gonna say to hell with him. So that was it. But it's all right. I do think the worst of it's over for Buffalo. I do think, New York State the thing that New York State has going for it is that they really, the last big stadium projects that they've had were Yankee Stadium and Citi Field. The NFL teams are all on the Jersey side. They haven't had to fund those. So I think, Buffalo, I think they will help. I think they will help the Bills a good deal. I personally would love to see them renovate their current stadium. Maybe they raise the floor and make another bowl up top where they can put more luxury boxes, make it in a way that isn't quite as terrible as far as the wind goes. If any of you are familiar with a Bills football game, anybody who's and I'm a Bills fan, so that's why I'm talking a lot about them at the moment. But anytime you have a game in the winter, you're going to have treacherous treacherous conditions as far as being able to kick a field goal. You just don't know which way the ball's going. It will swirl. It can be nasty. It can drop off. It can change directions. You can look at the flag in one end and it's going the other way in the other. You just so to me, the thing that site offers you is a great area for the continuation of probably one of the best tailgate atmospheres in the country. I'm sure it's pretty good in Green Bay. Anywhere that you've got something that is not, but see, the NFL doesn't really want that. What they want is they want fans to go in there and buy the $10, $15 beers, and the fans in Buffalo get loaded in the parking lot on their Jenny Light, and then go in and, make a bunch of noise, and then they go home, and they don't spend the money in the stadium. And the owners don't like that. The owners don't like the small number of boxes, and so that's what it's at. ID Jester, my brother and I have a blog that we barely ever post on anymore, but we called it Rich Stadium Dreams, and it has nothing to do with the sponsorship from Rich Dairy, but it was mostly because those were the days that it was the glory days. It was, and it wasn't all glory days. There were some years between the Joe Ferguson years and getting Jim Kelly that it was really nasty. Hank Bulla and Kay Stevenson and all those guys, it was some bad years, but then they loaded up, and then it was every year you were thinking deep playoff run, and it was just a great time to be a kid growing up in. I wasn't in Western New York. I was in Northern Pennsylvania, but you were kicking along. Actually, you were in a better spot than the Steelers for once. The Steelers were always the ones that were puffing their chests out. The fans, 4 Super Bowls. And yeah, they did, but the Bills, they were going to them, and the Steelers weren't at that point. So, for me, there was a period of time, then a lot of those fans started hitting up the 49ers and such, and of course the Cowboys. But, it was a great time. So anyway, I guess I should get back to, so this wraps up week 5 of Tenacious. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to get into week 6. I kind of still, I'm not quite burned on it. A 4-game week is a pretty good output. Like it gets it pretty much satisfies you in terms of playing football as far as second season goes. I can push through for another week. It's just, do I want to, or do I want to move on to something else? And so that's where I've also had the itch for a little more soccer, so I might do that. Always have baseball that I could yank out, and it doesn't take me long to get back up to speed with that. So with all that said, I don't have too much more to say, other than just, I know the videos from my side of things have been a little bit lacking as far as number. Don't worry. Things will be coming. Again, it's like this game is not one that lends itself. What I could do is probably play a full game, but I'd have to split it into 3 or 4 videos. Oh, excuse me. Woo. Hate it when that happens. The old lunch is paying me back. So, but I'm tired. I was up at 3:30 this morning, and I was kind of like barely able to get back to sleep at all until 4:30. So yeah, I have Jester putting in a plug for another Phillies replay, and yeah, it could happen one day maybe, but I don't know. I feel like the first time, I think it would be tough to duplicate the way that, because I know what happened. I feel like the Bills games in this Ninacious League are similar. I kind of know, I already experienced the downside of things. So now that that's happened, the only thing in the second season that really kind of like gets me fuming is just I had roll after roll of 46s and 64s and 55s, and so those are the unusual results, which are mostly penalties, and it's actually just like NFL, which is, you're watching a game and first play flag, second play flag, third play flag. Eventually, you just like, enough of the frickin' flags already. Can we actually play some football and get this thing moving? But that's where I get frustrated with second season. But I'm already kind of like preconditioned to say to myself, I let this get to me once. I really don't want to have that happen again. But never say never. That was a Bond. No, never say never again. That was a Bond movie. So I went and saw Endgame. I'm not a real big sci-fi guy. I mean, I like the old time, and by old time I mean 80s kind of sci-fi stuff. I'd probably be a sucker if I were to watch E.T. again. I'd probably be tearing up. Or I threw on Raiders of the Lost Ark last night. That's kind of a halfway between science fiction and a little bit of historical mingled in with the science fiction, as far as just understanding its place in history. Kind of like what I would view as maybe a precursor to the steampunk. It's like you're glamorizing the 30s and in that era, glamorizing a different era with in indie. So we saw Endgame. It was fine. I was pretty frustrated at times with that too. I guess I'm becoming a bitter old man. So, I like things that make sense, and I like things that I don't like to get frustrated. And there were some parts about the way things unfolded near the end that were just real frustrating. So, and anybody who's watched it probably knows what I'm talking about. And I think that's their plan, but doesn't mean I have to like their plan. So, all right, I'm going to sign off here. We're on about 35 minutes, just getting there. So, look for something here in the next couple days, something a little different. Probably won't be this football. I might move back into soccer a little bit. Could get the golf back out. Could be time to do tournament 3 of that, but we'll see. So, Jester, yeah, I don't know. We also have a common thread of certain sports allegiances, and it's good to hear that you're having a good time with your 2011 Cardinals. So, success always helps. Just don't expect Brad Lidge to go perfect. I don't think he pitched for the Cardinals that year, so I don't think you have to worry about that. But all right. Well, from one bitter old man to maybe another one, if you're watching out there, keep rolling. Don't let life get you down too much. It'll be all right. I hope so, at least. See you next time.